I'd like you to meet Eagle. This young orphan has a secret power. When the dark and evil bad guy rolls through town to take over the world, this boy must become a man with the help of a wise sorcerer who will guide him on his destiny, but die very shortly after. Onward to glory our hero goes. There's a world to save. Ugh. I felt dirty having to say that. Let's talk fantasy tropes. I'm author DC Ferguson, and this is the Worldbuilding Dojo. Before we get started, check this bad boy out. I've just released book 6 of the Dragon's Dream Saga Fated Alliance. It's available in ebook, paperback, and totally free to read on Kindle Unlimited. Stay tuned at the end, too, because you're going to get a preview of the first chapter of book 7 as well. Full of action, twists, turns, and the wild world where technology and magic are at odds with each other. Get the latest tale in the Dragon's Dream Saga on Amazon now. I don't hate tropes. No, seriously, I really don't. As you may recall from our episode on tropes and cliches, a trope is basically the brand standard. Tried and true, these aspects of storytelling pop up with great frequency in the genre. Like, when I say hard-boiled detective and femme fatale, you instantly might associate that with pulp or noir fiction, and you'd be right. When a trope is positively beaten to death, it becomes cliche, where that aspect of storytelling is so overused that you as a storyteller look bad using it, or the work suffers because it's there. The line is really gray if I'm being honest. That tired example I used in the beginning there, you could literally say that that's the plot for Lord of the Rings written in 1954, or Star Wars written in the 70s, or it could be Harry Potter in 97. Are audiences tired of these stories? The answer is maybe. Depends on what you pull off. That's the sad truth. If you pull off a Star Wars or Harry Potter, with a combination of cliches, tropes that are tried and true, and a good bit of luck, lightning can strike and nothing I say about this matters. However, this is one of those high-risk, high-reward things, because if you don't pull it off, you can have Metal Man here, or something like it, where it seems like you're copying giants you can't hold a candle to. So, where is the line drawn? Again, you could shake up a magic 8-ball and get about as accurate an answer. If you look at any list of cliches that publishers and agents would automatically reject you for, I believe talking animals, especially cats, were like right near the top of the list. Some of these you could get away with if your story has a few of them, such as the wise old sorcerer or the orphan protagonist. What we're really looking at today is how fantasy tropes both help us and hurt us, where we can seek to improve, and when it's not okay to jump the shark. Believe it or not, veering too far away from familiar tropes can actually alienate your intended audience. Fans of the fantasy genre, for example, do have certain expectations of what is between the covers, like any other genre. So if you're telling a story of an orc general and the naughty elf girl, paranormal romance is the second door on the right. If you get really graphic about it, erotica's right across the hall. If you're telling a detective-style fantasy tale, like a cross-genre noir fantasy, first of all, you're awesome, and I say go for it, and then you can hand that to me, and we'll build a blanket for it and be best friends while I read it. But you might not find as wide an audience filled with people like me that would appreciate it. You might be hitting all the right notes for a detective's pace, but all the wrong notes for fantasy fans. Again, it's tricky. So, let's get into it, and in order to do that, let's first see where the tropes lie. For the most part, fantasy has chugged along in the past few decades on the same path that other genres have, which is toward more realism. You see this expressed in film, where more and more of the big-budget summer blockbusters are trying to be smart and grounded in more realistic action and believable plots. Now, when I say smart, I really mean not dumb. After all, we're mostly at a point where our villains don't sit on a throne beneath their weak point that will shatter with a batarang, or like a rock. With that in mind, classic fantasy tropes can be blended in better to fit with your overarching narrative and be just fine. Yeah, it's still going to be tiresome if we're nitpicking, but you have to make some decisions on how plot-centric your choices are. For example, if you're going to go with that orphan protagonist, ask yourself why you're doing it. Is it because of your story, like Harry Potter or Star Wars, where it's actually an integral part of who the protagonist is? Are you doing it because it's part of your setting, like a hyper-realistic Game of Thrones-styled world where there's incredibly high infant mortality rates, poor medical technology, and so on? Sure, that makes some sense. If your goal is to get the parents out of the way, or to prevent the, no, my son isn't going with you on a quest, you creepy old wizard man, get off my property, then I'd say you're doing it for the wrong reasons. Here's the thing. While I may be shameless in plugging myself at every opportunity, sometimes I also feel it's important to show how I did something in order for you to never be afraid. So, in the Dragon's Dream saga, my main character, Cora Blake, was raised by her mother after her father was assassinated when she was 10. Mom is in the books. Not much, but she's there. Granted, Cora's 24, but the thing is that super secret arcane agent for the NSA, Cora Blake, kicks a lot of butt, and she still calls her mommy. You don't have to shy away from your protagonist having a family and relationships. A lot of the time, storytellers use tropes like this orphan deal to make them heroes in a vacuum, where there is nothing that ties them to their old life. That simplifies the story and allows us to have a tunnel vision that keeps moving forward on the quest, never looking back. I'm sure you can see why that's so tempting to many of us. Another classic one is one I've already mentioned, the wise old wizard that serves as a mentor for a good 6 chapters and then dies, fueling our heroes onward. I call these guys Kleenex wizards, because you only want one when you need it, and then you want to throw it away as quick as possible when you're done. Looking at the mechanics of why you'd use them, it's obvious. They tell the hero everything that they need to know, and basically anything that the audience would need to know that the hero would not learn otherwise. I mean, how else can we tell the villain's origin story, or the secret of some lost magic power, or the true birthright of our protagonist, if not for them? Well, get creative. The Kleenex wizard is lazy, if I'm being honest, and you're almost always using them to avoid long exposition or making your plot seem contrived when the hero just so happens to figure out the evil plan. You see, the biggest problem with defaulting to a lot of these tropes is that we're cutting corners. If you don't know how to involve the parents, orphan. Don't know how to convey the plot or the hero's power, Kleenex wizard. Don't understand how to develop your antagonist, dark overlord that wants to rule the world. Why is this hero the one you've decided and not somebody else? Chosen one. So, if we know when they're good or they're plot integral, we can use tropes. However, when they're bad, what do? Well, I'm glad you asked. It really is true that subverting a trope is like when your know-it-all friend tries to guess the next part of your story and they're wrong. It doesn't have to be a big tweak or a brand new way of doing things. Sometimes it can just be as simple as coming at the trope from another angle. What do we mean by that? Well, we want our hero to have agency and be able to make their own decisions. That can be hard if they have a mom and dad. Instead of making them an orphan, you can attack the problem in innumerable ways. Perhaps it's a Spartan-like culture. With dad injured by the enemy and time running out, our brave hero child needs to turn scout and run full speed to catch up with the enemy or to warn a neighboring village. In this instance, our hero is their last hope. All is lost without putting their faith in them. Me personally, I don't even like child heroes in stories, which is why I could subvert it by having my character be an independent adult that loves her living mother very much. But let's say I was writing a child or a teen hero. Do I keep the parents? Sure, I could. If the hero is really a chosen one or possesses some power that comes along once in a generation, then perhaps the parents are in awe of him. That awe can come from the power itself or the weight of something like religion or prophecy bearing down on them. Not wanting to stand in the way of destiny, they can only kiss the hero goodbye and pray for their safety and that they've raised him well. The subversion you use in your work is really just a mastery of understanding why the trope was there in the first place. What purpose does it serve as a device for the storyteller? How does it move the narrative forward? The answer for a lot of these isn't going to be hard to figure out. After all, you sought out and found my channel, so I know my hungry baby birds want to expand their knowledge. What we want to do is take the tried and true tropes that are there for a reason and subvert those, while we recognize tropes of weak writing and simply do away with them. I think it's probably easier if I show you what I mean. That's right, more charts. Okay, so On one side, we have our typical fantasy tropes, and in the middle, how I subvert them in the Dragon's Dream saga. Now, I'm not saying my way is right, far from it. What I am saying is that this is one way I've done it, and what works for your story may be different. However, what's important to notice is how little tiny changes to the common tropes can have far-reaching implications for your storytelling. So, with the classic orphan one, as we mentioned earlier, I didn't go for that one at all. One of her parents is alive, and the other is the focal point of the second book. Now, this column on the right, look at the storytelling implications here. If I have parents, I have to mention them, perhaps even interact with them. For a great example of protagonists with living parents they have to interact with while keeping their own agency, I recommend checking out Boiler Room. Great movie. Now, let's look at the mentor, our Kleenex wizard, in the Dragon's Dream saga. I kill the mentor figure by chapter 3 or 4. Not only does he die, he takes all of his secrets with him. Everything our protagonist needs to know, he could probably tell her, but he's dead. So it's a chase to find out the truth. This changes pacing, and with the hero always feeling like they're one step behind, it also adds a level of mystery, as the goal isn't being spoon-fed to them. For a fun take on this with not only subversion, but also a twist, check out the first Mission Impossible movie. Now, we can have a hero's journey without an antagonist. So we have the big bad evil guy, who's often a megalomaniacal tyrant with too much power. They want to use this power to bring the world to its knees, take it over, whatever. I mean, can some people be that narcissistic? Yeah, sure, but it's boring. An overambitious narcissist that wants power to feed their ego and crush anything in their way is terribly lame. It lacks nuance and depth. How did I subvert that? Yeesh. Ugh. My villain is one of the most complex and bizarre relationships with a protagonist I've ever seen, and I've read and watched a lot. And that's not patting myself on the back, because let me tell you, I made a lot of work for myself. It's like, imagine if the will they or won't they of Ross and Rachel on Friends had a baby with Daredevil and Kingpin. Moreover, the dragon has already won at the start of the story. He's pop culture's sexiest man alive for 3 years running despite being a dragon. And as the CEO of the most powerful company on Earth, he's basically the ruler of the world's most important country. The implications? Depth. Oh my god, the depth I have to give this character. He needs gravity whenever he walks in a room. He's not Rapunzel locked away in a tower until our hero comes pounding at the door. My hero and villain sit down in a cafe over breakfast to discuss matters between them, knowing full well it'll be all-out war when night comes. They interact with each other on a regular basis, knowing that they're on a collision course at the endgame. For a feel of this kind of touch and go with a well-developed antagonist, check out the movie Heat or Daredevil on Netflix. Artifacts? Yeah, I got that one covered too. You know what we're talking about. The One Ring. The Ark of the Covenant in Raiders of the Lost Ark. This supreme power that everyone is after but no one should hold. This was an easy solution for me. I powered down the artifacts and gave them out to everybody. No, I'm not kidding. As Cora realizes the nature of the Cold War between herself and Lucius, she finds out they're both looking for artifacts that contain the spirits of those that once held them. It's a cool way to basically get historical characters as allies in my story. The thing is, the antagonist and our hero both have allies that seek out these artifacts, and getting one basically just means you're on the team now. No chasing MacGuffins for an entire story. The implication of that power is significant, but not a plot unto itself. While it adds flavor to the story, it has to be developed enough to be enjoyable. So there's challenges even in that, but this opens up narrative possibilities way more. I mean, we actually get to use the artifacts instead of chasing them. I don't really have a good example of this, probably because it doesn't get done much, but it's very similar to the concept of like ultimate weapons in role-playing games, so let's say Final Fantasy VII. Lastly, the course of our plot has been foreseen. Behold, the prophecy. The chosen one. Or the prophecy of the chosen one. Fate guiding our hands, or having destiny on our side, gives us an escape route as storytellers to default to mysterious ways if a reader ever determines a plot hole or a misstep in your narrative. Sometimes the trope is done so well that you just strap in and enjoy the ride. I didn't actually subvert this one at all. I guess you could say I overted? Is that a thing? Anyway, I leaned so hard into prophecy and fate that my world literally has no such thing as coincidence. The protagonist's whole goal through the entire series is to avoid that fate that keeps chasing her, where her every decision seems to put her at odds with the dragon. This trope is so integral to my plot that I wholeheartedly embraced it. For another example of that, check out The Matrix. Now, it's your turn. You know these familiar beats when you see them. What we want to do is understand what they're doing, why they're there, and then don't lean on the classic method of execution. Instead, this is where you get to flex creatively. See what you come up with. After all, you're my student, and the Master of Kung Fu and Friendship believes in you. Tropes aren't a dirty word unless they become cliche. Where that line gets drawn is fuzzy. So it's important that you think critically about why and how you're moving your story and all its pieces. Motivation is key, and will make your story original with more nuance and depth if you pay attention to it. Once again, the donations from you guys are so awesome, and I thank you so much. We're still working with the Boston-based Needs organization to get this beautiful lady a service dog. Her name is Liana. She's 11 and on the spectrum. This wonderful person is my little girl, and if you'd like to help out, there's a link in the comments below. Also, don't forget to sign up for my newsletter. The link is also in the comments, and you're going to get Cora Blake, Arcane Agent, totally free. You'll get cool news about what I'm working on in books and here on the channel, and it comes loaded with cool authors and promotions for fantasy and sci-fi. Don't forget to like and subscribe to hear about new videos, and as always, I'm DC Ferguson. Now have fun and get crafting.